Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So first off, I want to apologize for the lack of videos for the past couple of days. I was out of the country, but we're now back in business and ready to go. And the first video I want to make on my return is going to be the must pick or ban champions. I've been looking through many statistics and just checking out what current champions are just flat out the best in certain areas and which champions you should really watch out for. So hopefully this will give you a better idea as to what to do in patch 6.13. As usual, if you guys end up enjoying this one, make sure to hit that like button to let me know, and make sure to also let me know which champion do you believe to be the most overpowered at the very moment. But with all that out of the way, let's get right into the first champion. So as usual, the first champion is always the one I personally believe to be the strongest at the very moment and a definite must pick or ban champion, and that's going to be Hecarim. Now obviously some people will disagree with this, but whenever I play League of Legends, whether it's normals or solo queue, I mean, whenever I see a Hecarim, he is just absolutely ridiculous. There really isn't much more to say about this. Again, the new Trinity Force is just perfect for him. It does a lot of damage, and the main thing is the fact that he can just build Trinity Force. He can even go Cinderhulk for the jungle item and pure tank afterwards, and getting those tanky defense items like Deadman's Plate, Sterak's Gauge. And not only is he very hard to kill, he's also very mobile. He can get to the backline extremely easily, but he still does a lot of damage. His ganking power is quite strong as well. I personally believe he has a very solid wave clear in the jungle because he can clear those camps with ease with his Q ability. He can go to other jungle camps very easy with his E as well. There's just a whole bunch of reasons as to why Hecarim is just flat out very strong at the moment, and if I were you, I would definitely either watch out for him or start picking him up if you jungle. But if you do end up picking up this horse, then you want to go 12-0-18 for the masteries, getting the strength of the ages, because again, all you want to do is stack that HP because your Trinity Force and your tanky offensive type items are going to be doing enough damage. And that's really what the meta is just all about right now, just being a tanky damage dealer. The items should be somewhat self-explanatory, and the runes, without question, you want to run Move Speed Quince because it just synergizes with his overall kit and playstyle very well. But let's make our way all the way down to the bot lane, and the first champion I'll be talking about here that isn't necessarily a must ban, but is without question, in my opinion, a must pick for the ADC role: Ashe. Ashe has been up and coming for a few patches now, and it's only getting even better for her because more and more people are just simply realizing her strength. They're realizing the potential that this champion has, and she has one of the best ultimates in the entire game. Whenever you think of solo queue, I mean, one of the first things that should come up to your mind is just not being organized, people just doing what they want to do, and people getting caught out left and right. And what does Ashe Arrow do perfectly? It catches people out left and right. This thing can without question win games, but on top of having one of the best ultimates in the entire game, her kit is just very strong right now. It synergizes with the core ADC items. Essence Reaver will help you do a lot of damage but give you the CDR to spam more of your ultimates, and then you'll also be getting things like Runaan's Hurricane, which works with her Q just absolutely wonderfully. All in all, this champion has a pretty decent laning phase, and she has a lot of gank potential whenever the jungler ganks for you past level 6, and she scales really well with Runaan's Hurricane and the rest of the items. So here are my recommended items, runes, masteries, and the overall build for Ashe, playing her down in the bot lane as an ADC because, well, I mean, where else would you play her? But let's chill over in the bot lane for just a little bit more and talk about one support champion, someone that also is, I feel like, up and coming as well: Leona. Now I'm slowly starting to see more and more bans coming towards Leona, but I'm also starting to see her much more frequently. Her statistics across the board are just insanely high. She's very successful, and for good reason. I feel like people are just realizing, you know what, this champion is definitely not out of the meta. I mean, in fact, she's actually quite good. She can put a stop to a lot of champions. She has a lot of synergy with other ADCs in the laning phase like Lucian, even Ashe, and even someone like Misfortune, or almost anyone for the most part, because of the raw damage her passive applies. We're also starting to slowly see a transition in terms of how the meta is playing out because, yeah, even though you still see champions like Vladimir or Swain being dominant, building tanky stuff, and Hecarim as well, there are also definitely more carry type champions coming out of top lane and even the jungle. So what does that mean? You need a little bit more beefiness in your team. Leona perfectly fits that. All in all, a support champion that can lock down a target for several seconds, can make a lot of plays happen, has a lot of damage, and is a fantastic frontline. So if you do end up trying to pick up this champion and play her in the support role, then you should definitely try to use these runes, masteries, and all that good stuff. Bond of Stone for the masteries without question for Leona, but if you really want to, you can probably get away with Strength of the Ages, but it might take a little too long to stack up. Your items will be quite standard, those protective support ones to help your team out, but then you want to transition into more of a tanky initiator role with the Sunfire and the Frozen Heart. But let's go all the way to the opposite side of the map, and this time we'll be talking about Trundle. Now this guy is very scary. I mean, if you've seen a Trundle go off, then it probably felt impossible to stop him. He can bully a lot of top laners, he has a lot of presence as well, he's fantastic when it comes to split pushing, whether you go Triforce or Ravenous Hydra or even both. But he also has the option to go Iceborne Gauntlet instead of the Trinity Force. Again, just depends on what your team has, what the enemy team has, and what kind of playstyle you want to fit. The point is, there's flexibility, and that's good. But in my opinion, when it comes to a 1v1 duel, Trundle's ultimate is one of the best things in the game. I mean, it just offers insane amount of stats, a lot of damage, he gets a lot of life back as well. It's very hard to deal with unless you're just severely ahead of the champion. So if you're ever facing a Yasuo, or even a Darius, or a Laue, Aurelia, Gangplank, or even an Echo, Garen, Tryndamere, Wukong, Trundle can probably do well. So if you're looking for a relatively easy champion that has a lot of presence and is strong in a 1v1 scenario, can split push, and is pretty hard to kill as well, Trundle is your go-to. So if you do try to play him, then here's my recommended build for him. Again, like I said, for the items, there's a lot of flexibility, whether you go Triforce or Iceborne Gauntlet, or you go for the Ravenous or Titanic Hydra. It just depends on what you're trying to fill for the team, what you're trying to accomplish, and what the enemy team has. Getting some attack speed in your runes is also quite good because you just want to whack away at your opponent with your big stick. And even though it got nerfed not too long ago, Grasp of the Undying for the masteries is most likely your go-to, but I honestly feel like if you really wanted to, you can probably go Fervor of Battle and play a little bit of a more assassin dually type Trundle. Either way though, this is not a troll you want to mess around with. But let's move into the final 3 champions, ones I feel like you guys are very familiar with by now, because not only have they been dominant for several patches now, but they can also be played in more than one role. The first champion we'll be talking about is going to be Swain. So yes, Swain did get some nerfs patch 6.13. I mean, his ultimate got increased by 10 seconds in terms of its cooldown. Now, that's a pretty decent hit, but it's still not enough to really just say, yeah, he's flat out nerfed. He's not useful anymore, don't play him. It's still too risky. He's kind of a kindred at the very moment. And what I mean by that is the fact that it's just hard to really understand, is he still worth it or not? So it's much safer to just pretend like, you know what, he's still overpowered, let's wait it out just a little bit more. And the reason for that is because the damage is still very much there, the life steal is still there, and everything Swain did before, he can still very much do right now. It's just he can't do it as often, or at least you have to pick your times better. So maybe he's slightly more difficult to play since you have to use your ultimate wiser, but he still does everything he used to do. It's not changed at all. So whether you're playing Swain mid or top, here are my recommended runes, items, masteries, and all that stuff. So first of all, we have Rod of Ages, the Spirit Visage, Rylai's Crystal Scepter, Zonya's Hourglass. All of these things are very core and staple on Swain. Nothing should be a surprise. There's definitely some flexibility in the masteries. Now, usually I'd recommend going Deathfire because it's just the safest option, but you can go Thunderlords for a little bit more lane dominance, though I don't feel like that's the best option. Or you can go Strength of the Ages to become a little bit more tanky. But in most scenarios, Deathfire will be the best choice. Let's move into the next champion that can also be played mid lane and top lane to very good success, Vladimir. Just like Swain, Vladimir also got some changes this patch, but his weren't necessarily nerfs. Instead, he's starting to get the Echo treatment, and we all know how many patches it took for Echo to consistently get nerfs to be finally put down to where he's not considered to be flat out broken. All in all, what happened to Vlad is now you have to build a little bit more AP to actually do more useful things, and if you just go straight tank, it's just not going to be as strong anymore. So what does this mean? I mean, well, chances are, yeah, he can still be played top lane, he can still be played mid lane, and he's still a very strong champion, and you should probably ban or pick him, but it also means that his mid lane power has just been increased. Because top lane tends to be that tanky AP type role, while mid lane tends to be a little more focused on the offensive aspect of champions, and Vladimir, obviously getting changed to a slightly more offensive champion this patch, just simply fits the mid lane. All in all, this guy is still very strong, you should still watch out for him, and you should probably still pick him or ban him. But if you do end up playing Vladimir, then here's what you should probably do with him. First of all, 1812 with the Cunning and the Resolve tree getting the Storm Raider Surge helps you position yourself because he really is all about the positioning. He doesn't have any hard CC. In terms of items, I like to go Hextech Proto Belt. It's a lot of fun to use, it fits him perfectly, gives him a lot of good stats, and it's just a lot of burst damage. But if you're not feeling safe with it, you can skip it out and go for something a little bit more defensive. But all in all, the build is still really close to how it used to be. Instead, maybe now you want to throw in a Rabadons instead of maybe a Void Staff, or maybe even instead of a Spirit Visage. Just depends on what the enemy team has. But moving on to the final champion I want to talk about before jumping into the honorable mentions, Malzahar. This guy is just insane still. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous how many patches have passed and how he's still just considered to be a top tier champion. This guy can be played in 3 roles to success: mid lane, top lane, and even still the jungle. But from my research, it does seem like mid lane Malzahar is the go-to, even though the other 2 roles are still quite good. Now, to a certain extent, he is a little difficult to play because you do have to utilize your abilities in a proper order and actually utilize them at the right time, or you are going to be kind of lacking damage. But if you do use them properly, you're going to be doing a lot of annoying damage. You'll be very hard to kill, and you can easily shut down carries with your ultimate. He pushes in lanes very easily. I mean, he still fits the meta building those tanky AP items. Malzahar is still very much Malzahar, and why he's still the way he is beyond me. Maybe Riot is just unsure on how to nerf him or change him. Maybe they're still trying to figure it out. I'm not entirely sure, but what I am sure about is he's still a must pick or ban champion, and you should definitely watch out for him. The masteries and items should be still more or less the same, going for the Deathfire Touch in the masteries and getting the tanky AP items like Rallies, maybe even Leandri's Torment if there's a lot of tanks, Rod of Ages, or Morellonomicon, depending on if you're playing top lane or mid lane. But all in all, everything should be quite self-explanatory. Now, right before I end off this video, there are a couple of honorable mentions I want to go over. The first one I want to talk about is top lane Tahm Kench. Now, I do feel like he's an up-and-coming champion and people will slowly start to realize his true power. And also, once champions like Malzahar or Swain or Vladimir get tuned down even a little bit more, because, you know, they are quite decent against Tahm Kench, his dominance will only begin to rise. I seriously feel like Tahm Kench is going to be slowly making his way up there, so you should definitely keep an eye out for this guy. And the next champion I want to talk about is Soraka down in the bot lane. Now, Soraka, arguably a lot of people will say, is probably the best support champion at the very moment, but I want to put a bit more spotlight onto Leona because I truly think she's up and coming and she's going to be a very strong champion you'll be seeing much more frequently down in the bot lane. So it's more of just making room for more interesting champions, ones that you guys haven't really seen very often. But either way, guys, there you have it, my 7 must pick or ban champions, patch 6.13 or patch 6.13, whatever you want to call it. I really hope this video was informative for you guys and you learned something new and found it very useful. If you did, make sure to let me know by hitting that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Let me know down in the comments below which champion you personally believe to be the most overpowered at the very moment. But I truly thank each and every one of you guys for watching, and I'll see you for the next video. Peace.